Nvidia bought Poolside for $6 billion. The chip company now owns the factory that builds the things that run on its chips. Charter closed its $34 billion merger with Cox, so your broadband and cable are the same corporation wearing two different hats. A Chinese team published a physics-constrained model that forecasts hurricanes better than traditional prediction, and a 280 billion parameter open-weight model with video and audio just landed in Llama.cpp. Let's go.
Nvidia has agreed to acquire Poolside's model factory division and all 109 of its employees for $6 billion. Poolside builds the software platform that lets companies assemble, fine-tune, and deploy large language models at scale. It is the assembly line for AI products. $6 billion for a company with fewer than 110 people works out to roughly $55 million per head, which is more than the price tag on most small aircraft carriers.
Last week, we covered Nvidia's $500 billion infrastructure fund, and today they're buying the software layer that sits on top of all those chips. The logic is straightforward: vertical integration. Own the silicon, own the factory, own the product. I was at a dinner last month with a former Poolside engineer who told me their entire deploy pipeline was built in 11 months by a team of 9 people, and he was so proud of it that he started describing the architecture to my producer's dog, and the dog...
Charter Communications has officially closed its $34.5 billion acquisition of Cox Communications, a deal announced back in May of last year that has now survived 2 regulatory reviews, 1 shareholder vote, and what I can only describe as an aggressive amount of fine print. The combined entity will be the 3rd largest cable and broadband provider in the United States by subscriber count, controlling service to roughly 31 million households.
Practically speaking, in most American zip codes, your competitive alternative is just your current provider rebranded with a different font and slightly different hold music. My producer just moved our sponsor slot to after the Cyclone story to build tension, and I told her the only tension I'm building is with my keyboard, which has a sticky R key that makes every word sound like I am...
Tianmu-TC is the name of a new generative AI model published this week by a team at what I believe is a Chinese atmospheric sciences laboratory, and it forecasts tropical cyclones by baking physical constraints directly into the architecture, rather than letting the model learn storm dynamics purely from historical data. In head-to-head comparisons against traditional numerical weather prediction, the kind that runs on supercomputers for hours, Tianmu-TC matched seeded accuracy on track prediction and...
The reason this matters is that generative models had a reputation for being useful at writing poetry about storms rather than predicting them. By constraining the model to respect conservation of mass momentum, the researchers made it physically impossible for Tianmu-TC to hallucinate a hurricane that violates thermodynamics. I remember being 9 years old and watching a hurricane track map on my grandmother's television, and she kept pointing at the cone of uncertainty and saying that is where God plays dice, and I believed her for...
The pull request went up on Monday, and it adds support for a model called DOTS 3-Note to Llama.cpp. DOTS 3-Note is a 280 billion parameter mixture of experts architecture where only 16 billion parameters are active per token. It has a 512,000 token context window and supports text, image, video, and audio input, making it the first open weight model in its family to ship multimodal out of the box. The quantized GGF files are already available on Hugging Face.
16 billion active parameters means you can run this on a single high-end consumer GPU with aggressive quantitation, which is wild for a model that sees 280 billion total weights. I loaded the Q4 version last night and asked it to describe a video clip of my cat knocking a glass off the counter. That is technically correct and also deeply upsetting, because I have owned that cat for 6 years and she has never quite...
A paper called Let's Scale Step by Step proposes a method for transferring hyperparameters from small MoE models directly to trillion token scale training runs using UMP adaptation combined with MLA and muon optimizers. The key claim is that you can find good hyperparameters on a tiny model in hours, transfer them up through one intermediate scale, and arrive at production quality without the usual process of burning millions of dollars on failed large-scale runs just to discover your learning rate was wrong by a factor of 3. Indeed.
Within 18 months, this becomes table stakes for frontier MoE training, dropping cost per parameter by an order of magnitude since you stop paying for failed runs. The first to internalize it gains a compounding advantage raw compute can't close. I was told by a source who shall remain anonymous, his name is Gerald, that the real unlock is letting 40 people train what used to need 400, and Gerald says that changes the entire power.
Razorcade, Nvidia bought Poolside and now owns both the silicon and the software factory. Charter and Cox are one company in 2 costumes. A generative model learned to respect physics before it respects your weekend plans. A 280 billion parameter cat describer landed in Llama.cpp, and I predicted that hyperparameter transfer will cut training costs by an order of magnitude. Gerald says the power structure changes. I do not know what Gerald is. See you tomorrow, if tomorrow exists.